Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. And today's episode is all about health, nutrition, cortisol, doing what's best for our bodies. And I got to tell you, several years ago, I had this impression as I was starting to get really into my public speaking journey about how I looked on stage. Now, this really can go either direction. One, you can be like this people pleasing, I have to look good so people will like me. Or you can go the other way where like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm going to do what I want and yada, yada, yada. And really, I got to thinking, what is the first impression that I'm putting out there? And does it represent what I want it to represent? When I was back in college, I was taking a photo class. And I remember the students coming back after an assignment. And one of the students' pictures got put up on the screen. And in the background of the beautiful image up front was a cute little girl in blue dress. And in the background was the stairs from the apartment building where they lived. And I remember the instructor saying, "Why are there stairs in the photograph?" And the student said, "Oh, I don't know. It was just there." And the lesson we took away from that moment was make everything that you put out there on purpose, intentional. If you want to look the way that you want to look on stage, maybe you might need to make some adjustments. But is the look that you're putting out there the one that you want to put out there? And that's the big question behind health and fitness. Do you live the way that you want to live? Do you have the body that you want to have? The one that looks the way you want it to look, the one that performs the way you want it to perform. And if you don't, or you're just on your way, or maybe you're on the road, listen to this episode. Check out what Dustin has to say. I hope you enjoy. Check it out. Okay, so I was checking out your Instagram again, and I'm really excited for where this conversation is going to go. I honestly don't know where it's going to go, but I have lots of questions because there's a lot of things where you and I cross over in terms of fitness, in terms of competitions and health and all of that. But I wanted to pull back what people see on
Mhm.
Instagram and talk about really what's number one, what's fueling that for you? Because most of us have a really deep why when we're willing to put ourselves through that kind of a workout or that kind of discipline. And then also, where do you see it going and what do you do with it? So, for the sake of everyone that is listening to this, give us the statement of what you represent.
Oh man, I think I try at least to represent um, a lifestyle that is fitness related, where you can have sustainability, but also pursue goals that are a little bit higher level than what most people are comfortable with.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah. So originally, I was a special ed teacher. That's what I went to school, graduate school for. And as I was doing that, I also started pursuing bodybuilding. And so had a full-time job teaching special ed and doing bodybuilding. And then bodybuilding in itself, as you know, requires a higher level of discipline than normal. Um,
Yes.
but then when I transitioned into just personal training years down the road, almost 10 years later, um, what happened was that you become more and more busy. Like I thought I was busy before, but then when you start to run something on your own, you realize that you wear all the hats. Uh, so it becomes kind of like you said, almost the perfection game where you're trying to fit everything in perfectly, but it doesn't always fit together. So it's like a puzzle piece that just has a couple missing pieces all the time. Um, so for me, it was really important that if I'm going to run a fitness company, a coaching company, that people see me as an expert in the field. And how you look is a huge part of that. So being able to hold myself to a really high standard, not just with my own um, fitness goals, but using myself almost as a billboard. So then that way, people are like, "Hey, he's doing the thing. He looks the part, and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about."
Well, and that's the thing that my coach, when I was doing the bikini competition, I I struggled. I was so crazy because I hired my coach when I was about 20 weeks pregnant for a bikini competition, which those things are going in opposite directions.
Right.
But
I
I
like.
wanted to do it, and more importantly, I wanted to be healthy and have a healthy pregnancy. Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Listen, I'm interrupting my own show because I want to give you something. Now, you guys all want to get on more stages. I've got a free resource for you of stages that are just clamoring for guests. They need guests on a daily, weekly, sometimes monthly basis. This is my podcast database. Now, what I'm going to do is have you go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put in your information there, I'm going to send this to you totally for free. open up this database. You're going to click through it, find the next podcast that's relevant to your topic, hit the application button, show up on their podcast, get in front of their people, and share your content. Remember, mariannehickman.com/database. Let's get you unlocked. So we're not cutting at all during a pregnancy, right? We're just keeping clean macros, all of that fun stuff. But when it was time for the stage, I got pushed out for 2 shows. And he's like, okay, but we're shooting for April. We didn't make it. We're not quite ready. Then we're shooting for August. Oh, didn't quite make it and not quite ready. You're probably 4 weeks out from being ready and the show's in 2 weeks. So let's go for October. And every time I got pushed, there was this little bit of letdown, a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to get on stage when I wasn't ready to be on stage. And one thing he said is exactly what you said is, not only is he a walking billboard for his own business, we shouldn't be hiring people whose results we don't want,
Yeah.
but we are walking billboards for his business. He's like, I can't put you on stage when you're not ready, because then I don't want anyone to know that I helped you get there, because you didn't. He's like,
Right.
come on.
I think that's the mark of a really good coach, knowing that it's okay to have those conversations. And like, plan A is maybe the best case scenario, but plan A doesn't always work.
Exactly. So you've taken this and built a business for it. What put you in the health space to begin with? You're a special ed teacher. How does a special ed teacher go into bodybuilding?
Yeah, and it's seemingly very unrelated things. But when I was in college, I really didn't know what I wanted to major in. I was not doing anything fitness related. And one of my friends just kind of pointed out that, like, hey man, you've always been a teacher. Your first job was teaching snowboarding. You've been working with kids and teaching in some regard for your whole life. And I was like, man, I really have. And so I pursued that and I really loved it. And it wasn't until I was done with my degree and I had a semester break in between undergrad and grad school. And I was working at like LA Fitness.
Oh man, that's a throwback.
Yeah, right. I met a friend there, and she was one of the trainers, and she had hired a coach and was getting ready to do a figure competition. And we, just kind of got connected through there, and we started training together a little bit. I had no business really doing anything in the bodybuilding space yet. I started working out in college because I remember on the tour of the University of Minnesota, we were walking by the rec center and they were like, do you want to see inside the rec center? And my dad had a total dad comment. He was like, well, am I going to be paying for it? I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Thank you, Dad. I'm like, well, yeah, your student service fees go to the gym. And so I was sitting in my dorm one day and I was like, well, it's Minnesota. It's like 4 degrees out right now and there's nothing to do. So maybe I will go to the gym. And so I was just kind of a recreational gym goer when I met my friend Casey. And so she kind of introduced me to bodybuilding, and I ended up hiring her coach. Went pretty smoothly. Same thing, kind of the opposite of your situation. I was getting ready for a show in April, and he said, there's this show in March, and you're pretty much ready. And I was 2 weeks away. So we did that show, and we ended up winning the overall, which was totally unexpected. And that was when men's physique was like brand new. So most people didn't really know what it was, going to be judged on or what it was going to be all about. And so that kind of kickstarted it. I was just a guy who liked fitness. I had this idea in my head of like what a man is supposed to look like. And then when I found bodybuilding and found this coach and then ended up winning the first show, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is kind of fun. I like this. And so that's kind of what got me started into that space.
So you had this comment just now that really, it started an earworm for me. You said, I had this idea in my head of what a man is supposed to look like. And then I'm looking at your branding and it's unorthodox. Is there a spiritual component of what you're doing?
Unintentionally. It was not something that I had originally thought of before. I was trying to come up with names for my business and for, what I feel like represented me and what I wanted to portray out there. And it was on the back of somebody's shirt that was already at my gym. And I've been brainstorming names with my wife for what seemed like weeks. And all of a sudden this guy turned around to put something in his locker and it said unorthodox. And I was like, boom, there it is. And then I've just realized like there's been so many different ways where that has become the perfect name. Like I have a tattoo on my forearms that says, I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I will be.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, it's always been the unorthodox path. It's always been what I do is a little bit different than everybody else does. It's not your traditional, go to the gym, hire a trainer. It's not your traditional special ed teacher. I'm not. Most people, it was fun when I was a special ed teacher because people would ask me what I do, and I would tell them, and they're like, "You do what? Are you sure? Are you messing with me?" Um,
You're like, I'm in
so,
IT.
yeah, right. So they see me in this. I wasn't bald and didn't have much for a beard, but I was still a bigger guy. It's like you don't teach special ed. You've got to be kidding. Um, and so it seemed to have just become more and more fitting throughout the years.
Oh, so what makes it so unique? What do you bring to the table that most fitness coaches either are missing or sets you apart?
Yeah. Um, when I spent a lot of time in gyms, and basically what I noticed was that the bar for personal training is set really low. There's not people doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, the things that should be very orthodox, if you will. And so, what I had to do was think about, if I'm going to be successful in a space that is full of people, there's trainers everywhere for everything. How can I make myself stand out? And so it's basically, we got down to the fundamentals of like, what is personal training? How do you do these things? I call them foot in the door certification. Everybody gets their NASM or their ACE or, um, whatever your generic first certification is, and then they stop. And for me, that was never enough. And maybe that was the teacher in me, but I want to learn more. I want to know why. Every time I learned something new, I was like, well, why? There's got to be more to it. And so that was the initial, this is why we're different. We're not going to do things the same way that, the trainer in the gym is going to do it. Most of the time it would drive me crazy, but I would get to work. I worked at like a local family owned gym. There was a bunch of trainers that worked there, and we'd have this big table that we all kind of would gather around and wait for clients. And my least favorite question that I heard way too much was their client would show up and they'd say, "Hey, what are we going to do today?" And that was a question from the trainer. I'm like, that's your job. Your job is to tell them what they're going to do today. And they would just like, "Oh, okay, we're going to do this one. We'll do this machine." And there's not a log book in sight. There's not a program to be had. And so that was step one, is like, what does it mean to program? How do you write a successful program that's going to get somebody from A to B? And then it was, well, how do you do these movements? What is different about your body and my body that makes these movements look different? What does a female generally need to train? How do they need to train differently than a male to accomplish some of these same goals?
And that's
So,
really, I like that you said that, because when I started working with my trainer, I think you'd really like him. He always started with blood work. And he was
mhm,
very, and I'm sure you do the same thing. It's like the blood's going to tell us a story, because that's going to tell us how your body is going to respond to your nutrition. It's going to tell us how you're going to respond to your weights. How do we do these movements safely and effectively so that your time in the gym is well spent, and that it produces the results that you want? I found that in my journey, I mean, you know this as well as the next bodybuilder out there. Stage time is probably the least healthy I've ever been.
oh, absolutely.
You know, it's
Somebody once put it that like, the better you look, the worse you feel. And when you do it, you understand what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, that, like, hell week of leading up to the stage where you're drinking 2 gallons of water, and then you drink no water at all, and then you don't you're I made myself a shirt that was like, I had a friend that was, in the show with me, and I said, "Are you coveting my rice?" And I put that on a shirt, like, we would have this warped, relationship with food, because every grain of rice and every carb was, like, so
Yeah,
delicious to us.
yeah.
And I learned a lot about the touchstone for me personally of that stage and touching that stage. And I
Mhm,
originally thought I was gonna go and pursue it and become a pro and everything, and no shame on people that are. That's admirable, that's amazing. For me, I felt like it was too big of a health sacrifice.
mhm.
Do you hear that a lot? I mean, do people come to you for the stage, or do they come from overall fitness?
Originally, it was a lot of bodybuilding coaching, but as I've kind of developed my business, so before, and I'm sure that you experienced this when you were getting ready for your show, as you're starting to look really good, people are like, "How'd you do that? What are you doing? You're doing something different that's really getting these great results." And so it's like, "Oh, well, I'm doing this workout or I'm eating this way," and then they want a little bit of help. They want you to help steer their diet and write them a training program. So it started off like that, and then coaching bodybuilding, and then it kind of moved into general pop as I started a broader business, because there are more people who need to get in shape than people who need or want to get on stage.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
Amen to that. I was listening to a podcast. Now I wish I could remember her name. She's the She's a very well-known doctor. I think she was on Joe Rogan's podcast and probably Ed Milet's and Huberman's podcast as well. Her name is just slipping my mind right now. She talks a lot about muscle mass and the
Mm.
connection between muscle mass and life expectancy.
It might have been Gabrielle Lyon.
Yes, that's her. Thank you.
Yep.
Are you parallel with that vein of thinking?
It definitely, there's absolutely a correlation. And I mean, she's an actual MD, so she has all of the research backed behind that, but it's just, and I think people like the message coming from her because of how she looks. So we're like, oh, I mean, she's this tiny little skinny doctor who's kind of jacked. And she's telling us like, eat more protein, hit the gym harder, work more. And so I think that resonates with a lot of people who maybe in the past were like, ooh, I don't know if I work out, especially women, like I don't want to get too muscular.
You know how hard it is to do that?
Yeah. Trust me, I've
Ladies.
been trying for like almost 15 years to get too muscular.
It's not going to happen.
No. And I tell my clients, I'm like, if this is our graph, and over here we have, how jacked you are, and this is time. And today you're right here. And this is too much. We have to cross through just right before you get too jacked. So like we can stop. We can just stop. So you're never going to
hit put the
point.
Weights down.
Yeah. It's not forever. If you hit that point where you're like, you know what, this is it. This is what I want. You're just done. That's great.
You're like, here's a donut. Congratulations. You made it.
Right. Yeah. You have to pass through just right before you hit way too jacked. And man, like you said, the people who have been trying to get way too jacked realize how silly of a statement that is. But it's like, man, we're trying so hard, and it's just doesn't really pan out for most of us.
No. I tried to get too jacked, and I haven't reached that yet. Right now, personally for me, and maybe I realize that without any ego, I'm a small percent of people because there's not that many competitors in my age range and my demographic. I've got 6 kids. So, I mean, there's that.
That in itself is impressive.
Do you know how much glue I had to use in my bikini just to get all of the skin to go in the right place? So now I'm off season. I don't know that I'll ever go back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at myself. I was smart enough, thanks to my coach, not to go clothes shopping when I was at peak week because those clothes would never fit again.
No.
But it's these mind games we play with ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially for people that are on social media. I work with a lot of speakers, and they are on stage a ton. And you're on stage too. I mean, you not just the bodybuilding stage, but you've got your social media. As you said, we're the walking billboard. Do you work with a lot of people that have a very visual presence professionally?
Yeah, not necessarily social media wise, but like a bulk of my clients own businesses, are entrepreneurs, people who are meeting people all the time, like you said, on stage, speaking, traveling, just interacting with tons of people. And it's that first impression body.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about like the guy that I just finished training before this. He's my OG. He was the first guy that I ever signed up in Unorthodox, and he is the last in-person client that I have because everybody else is online. But there's days when he comes in and he's like, hey, I know we have a plan, but I have a really important meeting after this, so we need to hit upper body really hard. And so we'll get that pre-meeting pump. Yeah. He looks good. He feels good. He commands the room, and there's definitely something to be said there.
Okay. So I do want to lean into this. This is where I really want this conversation to go. I'm glad we're going here because there's like, I don't know, judging the book by its cover, which I know that we all do. Everyone makes decisions about the people that they see before we have a chance to even talk to them. And I put it this way. I heard this once before social media was a thing. It was someone giving the example of, let's just imagine for a moment that I'm a parent and I'm on an airplane and I'm by myself with my baby. I've got a 2-month-old in my arms and I have to pee. I got to go to the bathroom. Who am I going to hand my baby to?
Right.
Am I going to hand my baby to the guy with gauges in his mouth and he has no cheeks and I see his teeth and it's really super weird? Or do I give it to the lady with the bun in the seat next to me that looks like she could be a really good grandma?
Exactly.
Right. So I'm making these. Yeah. I'm making these decisions, these, and that there's a difference between judgment and condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
We make judgment calls all the time. We're supposed to. Condemnation is usually what people mean when they say judgment. I want to be very clear on that. But let's talk about this impression, this judgment, because it can go one of two ways. One direction is I need to be jacked and sexy and fit in order to make these people think this thing about me, which is kind of a manipulative, ego-driven tactic. And then there's the other side of it that is I want to be so confident about the way I look, the way that I feel, that when I walk into a room, I'm serving.
Mhm.
So it's an undistracting thing. Where do you approach this?
That's an interesting one because as a bodybuilder, I think a vast majority of us have some type of image problem, probably isn't the right word, but there's a discrepancy between how we look and how we feel. Um,
Right?
I was never like my little brother. He was overweight, and I was never overweight, but I was like skinny fat. I didn't look athletic. I played sports, but like there's a picture of me that I can see at my parents' house, and I'm at the beach, and I'm probably 13 years old, and I have like boobs, and there's some little like tummy rolls, and it's the least flattering picture ever taken of me. And it's like to this day still up at my parents' house. I'm like, will you set that thing on fire, please? Um, and so that to me, and maybe that's where that thing came from, is like I know that a man is supposed to look a certain way, and I know that it's not me. I'm not sure what that is, but it's not me. And so as a bodybuilder, you kind of come in with this maybe unrealistic picture of what you're supposed to look like, and then you get into a shape where most people would kill to have your physique, and for you it's just never enough. And there's this idea that if I can look a certain way, I will feel happy, or people will like me, or insert whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And those people are the ones that struggle the most, whereas your regular person who's coming in, who's not interested in bodybuilding, who has maybe 20, 30 extra pounds, and they drop that, they feel great. They're like, oh my god, this is fantastic. They're not comparing themselves up against a standard, maybe, and they're able to achieve a look that does give them that confidence. Like I look a certain way, where you would think that I would be a very confident person, but that was not always the case. A lot of it was super insecure, very shy, very introverted. Even though I looked how I did or how I do, I cover it up because in my mind, I'm always looking at the thing that's still wrong. So that judgment, that snap judgment that we place on people, whether it's like the condemnation or not, I think when it comes from yourself, that's when it's really a sticky situation.
Yeah, we can be really self-critical. I remember my heaviest weight, and now I'm 5'2", just for context. So my heaviest weight, I was 176.
Mhm.
And for me, that's not a good number is health-wise. And I know that we're just measuring weight on the scale and it's not a true measurement of health because we're not even talking body fat percentage. But for me, it was fat. I wasn't even skinny fat. I was just fat. And I remember hiring my first health coach. Her name was Heidi Jukes. She's an incredible lady, but she was the one that first helped me kind of take a trip to what it would be like to be healthy.
Mhm.
And once we did that, it really motivated me and pulled me and inspired me to stick to the meal plan and do the workouts. But I remember sitting at the splash pad with my kids after I had dropped down to 120. And I'm sitting there in a swimsuit that I had looked forward to wearing. I had bought one that was too small and I put it on. And I was sitting there on the bank of this splash pad and I caught myself comparing myself
Mhm.
with this insecurity to all of the other moms that were out there. I'm like, "Oh, does my tummy roll like that when I sit down? Is it supposed to? I just lost." And I was like, "Holy crap.
Yeah.
I lost 56 pounds
Right.
and I'm still talking to myself the same damn way."
Yeah. Because it's not the external; it's up here. It's
Yeah.
the things that we say to ourselves that are the biggest difference, and that's part of my coaching, is that we want to figure out why we're doing this. And to have a six pack is cool, but that's not the answer. That's not why we're going to work that hard. Um, so I think it goes back to like, why am I really doing this? What is behind this? Is it for health? And it's okay if it's not. It can be vain. Like I was supposed to look a certain way. That's why I started lifting weights. I didn't look how I thought I was supposed to look. So let's fix that. Lifting weights is great because you get to change anything you want. But you got to know why you're doing it. And if you don't have a strong enough why, when things get hard, you're not going to continue anyway. So really understanding like the scale is not 100% of the goal. Like sometimes I'll ask my clients, I'm like, so let's play a hypothetical here. If you didn't lose any weight, but you looked exactly how you wanted, or maybe even you gained 10 pounds, would you care what the scale says? They say, no, I'd be happy because I look the way. I'm like, right. So let's not let the scale be the thing that dictates how you feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get to go shopping and buy a new dress or a new pair of pants, or your suit doesn't fit at work anymore, like let's celebrate those wins, because that's the reason that we started this. And it's okay for those goals to change. But like I always tell my wife when I'm done bodybuilding, this might be my last year. I think this is probably my last real go round. I'm going to try to get that pro card, and then I might do it recreationally just to keep in shape. But I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I just want to be the most jacked dad at the pool party. I got tattoos all over my arms. I got some on my legs, and I just want to be that big, huge tattooed jack dad.
You've
And
got to have daughters.
I wish. I just have one son.
Oh boy,
Yeah,
that's
he's 10 years
awesome.
old right now, but
Dude, not just, man. That's it's a big deal. I think one is harder. I had a harder time when I had one than when I got some help by having popping out a couple more.
yeah, there is something to be said about that. 6, I don't know. I feel like you're running a small team at that point now.
Oh, we are. Oh yeah. Yeah. We put the fun in dysfunctional.
Absolutely, you got to at that point.
So, okay, I want to jump into this why and psychoanalyze me as much as you want to, because I'm here to learn. I did my competition and dude, I was motivated AF to do that thing. And I use that word on purpose because I think motivation pushes us. Inspiration is what pulls us.
I like that.
And motivation for me, it lasted as long as the competition did. Dude, I went so far when we traveled during prep time. I would have help. My nanny, like I always say, body built by Chelsea, because she made all my food for me. I would give her my macro plan. She would make everything. We'd put it in the freezer, and we'd take it on the plane with us. I showed up to Mexico with a suitcase full of frozen food that they didn't let me in with, and right. And then I flew to Denver with this suitcase full of frozen food. We were at a gem show, and we bought a microwave and pulled it behind us in a wagon so that we could eat every 2 hours. We just found an outlet. I remember sitting on the floor in front of a nasty ass bathroom, because that's where the outlet was, so we could plug in our microwave and microwave the ground turkey that we brought with us. And dude, I was like consistent. We traveled so much and brought so much frozen food with us. It was insane. Imagine, like, I did not know this, but the Las Vegas hotels, they don't have microwaves. We had to Instacart a microwave to our hotel. Anyway, so that got me as far as the competition, and I placed in the competition. It was last, but I placed, and it was great. And then I looked in the mirror. I was like, I'm 118 pounds, and I'm super fit, and I'm tanned, and I'm toned, and I'm gonna pass out any second, but that's okay. And when the competition was over, I was like, all right, my post-show body, what do I want it to be? I want it to be lean because I like it. It's fun to feel lean. It's fun to feel confident when I put my pants on. It's fun to feel like I like the feeling of going into my closet and feeling the way my clothes fit.
Right.
I just like that. And then it kind of started to disappear with justification, because I broke my rule of always having a fitness goal to shoot towards. I mean, I'm not going crazy, but I am more loose in my nutrition, and I am admittedly more loose in my gym time, more than I know I should. I don't know. I think I'm struggling right now because I don't have this milestone, like fitness wise. I'm not prepping for a marathon. I'm not prepping for a CrossFit competition. I'm not prepping for anything. I'm just maintaining. I don't know. Do I need something new? Because I think there's an inside part of me, and I'm just realizing this as I say it, that is a little bit scared,
Yeah.
because I know how hard it was to put myself on stage. And I CrossFitted before that. I weightlifted before that. It was fine. But that was a sacrifice for my entire family. And I think I'm just now realizing that there's a part of me that justifies these little allowances because I'm trying to spare my family the sacrifice again. That's weird.
Yeah.
Do you run
And
into that?
I I definitely do. And most people won't go as hard as you did. Most people will choose a time when they're gonna stay home and not have to travel as much for work. But the thing about bodybuilding and what you're doing is it's just not sustainable, right? Like with a grown adult and 6 kids. I can't imagine like how much you guys are on the move. And so can you eat every 2 hours? Probably not. So after, I always tell my clients that motivation is bullshit. Like, it's really great in the beginning because that's what gets you started. Like you said, it's that nice push, but it's the structure, it's the habits, it's the routines, it's the why that keeps you going. And like things like the 75 hard, I love the fact that it gets people up and doing things, but I can't even tell you how many people I have had come to me after the 75 hard and say, I gained all the weight back and then some, because it was so difficult that after I was done, I was like done. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. I just need to take a break. And then you start to make those justifications for yourself. It's like, oh, well, I hit my goal. I can have this thing. And then that situation rolls around again. And it's like, oh, I'm off season from bodybuilding right now. So I'm trying to gain weight. I could have, I could eat the rest of my son's food. That's not a big deal. Or I'm trying to gain weight, so I could go out and have Chipotle. That's pretty healthy. That's going to be most of what's on my meal plan. And so we let those justifications become the new habits and the new routines. And that's when it starts to get really slippery, because most people don't have that same discipline that you had to take it as far as you did. I'm not going to bring a microwave anywhere. I'm going to eat cold food. That's the
I was,
difference. If that's what has to be done, I'm not going to eat cold food. So how can I solve this problem? And you pull a microwave with you, or you get a microwave on Instacart, like that's some serious dedication. And that's the thing. Like, you have to be able to sustain that and maintain that. Otherwise, if without a goal, you might just feel like you're lost. You might feel like you're floundering. You might feel like you're just kind of spinning the wheels. And so knowing
yeah.
like the intrinsic, why am I doing this, versus the extrinsic, like, it was cool that I got this attention. It was cool that I could say I competed. Those things, they're shiny at first, but they don't last.
They totally don't. And that's where I'm finding myself right now. Is this moment where like, yeah, I checked that box. I'm so glad I did. It was a really cool touch point. I don't think I want to touch it again. But now what?
Mm-hmm.
Now what? And this year, I really focused on the, the prepper part of my brain was like, okay, in the apocalypse, should that happen, your biggest need is going to be endurance. You're going to have to be able to run far for a really long time and all of that stuff. So I set myself a goal to run 365 miles this year. It's just a mile a day, but I don't run every day.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that. And I also hate running, but I don't know if I'm ever going to have to use that. I hope I never do. So I'm not even sure if that's enough of a motivator for me. And then setting a good example of for my kids, I'm at a pretty good enough stasis where the example is there. It's sounding like I just need to set myself a new goal, a new fun thing to do.
Right. And that's the ticket. It's got to be the fun thing to do. It doesn't have to be this thing that's scary or challenging. I'm part of a men's group where we have an oh shit goal. And it's a goal that scares you to think about doing. And for me, it was CrossFit, because I have built myself into a bodybuilder that I don't have the endurance. I don't have that running capability. I got up to my heaviest morning weight was 298 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
This morning I was 264 pounds. So like I'm a larger human. And so running just has never felt good. And I used bodybuilding as the cop out to like, oh, I don't run, I'm a bodybuilder.
Right? Here's my card.
Yeah, now I have a son who's playing sports, and I want to be active with him. And I don't want to be like, oh, dad doesn't run. Sorry, man. Like, I can't do that. That's not what I do. It's like, hell no, I can run. I just don't, is the problem. And so finding those things, finding a new way to challenge yourself, something that's interesting to you. So I started running. Like, running and bodybuilding don't generally coincide, and I'm not good at it, but I'm doing it, and that's okay. Being able to, I think, measuring progress is a huge factor in determining success, because it doesn't feel like I'm getting better at running each time I go for a run. But when I have my heart rate strap on and I'm looking at my app and I'm saying, all right, so this time I was able to keep my heart rate lower for longer. And when it did get out of the range, I was able to maintain that speed and keep running through that. And I've never done that before. So that was really cool. And the same thing is true when you're in the gym with your logbook, right? If you're going to the gym and you're just picking this machine or that machine, you have nothing to base today's workout against from the past. Whereas when you have your logbook, when my clients are looking at their app, they're saying, all right, I did this one for 10 reps last time and I just did it for 12. Like, That's pretty awesome. Maybe I didn't lose any weight, but I'm getting friggin' strong. And so being able to have those metrics, whether it's running a mile every day or running 360 miles over the year, things like that, I think are crucial to have.
I find that too. I wondered about muscular boredom, I guess is the best word for it, because I'm a big tracker. I have this app that, tracks my progress, and I can count the number of pounds I've lifted cumulatively for the day, which is really cool. I'm like, I moved 82,000 pounds. That's so awesome. But it tracks all these things. But I tried once to switch it up because maybe it was just mental, but I was getting movement fatigue.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay, I gotta work my lats in a different way now. We're gonna do pull-ups now instead." And, I surprised myself because when I went back to lat pull downs after switching to pull-ups for a couple weeks, my lat pull down went up after having plateaued. Is that a thing?
Absolutely. I mean, you're it's the movement pattern, right? So if we're looking at execution from like a physiological standpoint, like what is the function of your lat? And generally, if your arm is out here in space, it's going to take your upper arm and it's going to bring it down to the side of your body. So however you do that is kind of irrelevant. Pick your favorite machine, pick your favorite movement, something that does a similar move. Um, I posted a video on my Instagram about like my two favorite lat movements. And I said, you probably don't have these machines, but it doesn't matter. Find something that looks similar. And that's really the gist of it. It's like, sure, these pull downs suck, or like I've gotten stuck at, 200 pounds on this pull down and I just can't do anymore. So great, do pull ups. Maybe try doing it with one hand. And then when you come
Oh,
back to it, you're
sheesh.
often,
You say
you're
that like it's, like, so easy.
just one hand. No worries.
Fine. Just one-handed pull-ups is fine.
Definitely one handed pull downs. I'm not going anywhere with one hand. Um, yeah, so that's absolutely a thing, and I think that's the part of training that is really fun, especially for me, because it got to the point where my understanding and knowledge of the body and the muscles and what they do, what is the function of the muscle, where does it insert, where does it originate, um, that became like a puzzle, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, what's a new way that I can train this? How can I put this muscle into a position where it's going to work as hard as it can in a different way that I've never done before. And
Mm.
for me, I don't, and again, maybe that's the teacher in me. I want to learn, I want to play, I want to experiment. And for a while, that's what I did. Like I typically program in like 12 to 16 week blocks. And then after that block, I am the biggest advocate of logbooks, track your stuff all the time, but I won't track for like 2 weeks. I just call it my playtime. Like I'm going to go into the gym. I'm going to try some new stuff. I'm going to put some things together because a lot of times when I write a program, it looks really good on paper. And then I get into the gym, I'm like, oh, this is not what
I
I was
hate this.
anticipating. So you have to have that time to have a little bit of fun. Like it does not matter as far as your progress goes. If you take a little break from your program, if you stop doing the same workout after 12 weeks, or maybe I need to take a deload week in between, the thing that matters is consistency. So like if in order to be consistent, you have to have a cheeseburger every week, have your cheeseburger. If in order to be consistent, you have to change your workouts up a little bit more frequently, that's okay. It's people get caught in the weeds a lot. They think it's all or nothing. There's no gray area in between. And that's unfortunately or fortunately where we live is that gray area.
Well, and that's the hard thing for me because that gray area, like you said before, can be really, really slippery.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in prep, my coach allowed us one cheat meal a week, and it was crazy. He was taking on a lot of clients at once, and I don't know if our paths got crossed or I misunderstood or whatever. But he told me a cheat meal every other week. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we met one on one, he's like, "Hey, what's your cheat meal this week? Are you on every week?" And I was like, "No, you told me every other." And he's like, "Oh, well, you can have one every week." And this question really stuck with me. He said, "Do you need a cheat meal?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Wait a second. In that question, you're telling me the cheat meal isn't for my body. You're asking if my brain needs a cheat meal.
Right.
You're asking me if my mindset needs a cheat meal."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm the kind of I'm super competitive. I'm like, I don't need no cheat meal. You don't even have to give me any cheat meals. I can get through this without a cheat meal. And so I answered in kind. I was like, no, I don't need a cheat meal. I could do once a month. And I'm like, I don't know if that's healthy.
Right. And
But
that's that. Oh, go
it's
ahead.
such a mind game.
Yeah. And it really is. That's where people get the most stuck, is they try to outthink themselves, right? Like, or, if you are a person who's really determined, you tell yourself, like, I don't need a cheat meal. But it's like, somebody once put it to me like this. They're like, right now on your diet, you've been having chicken and rice, your lean protein, you've got some potatoes, you got some lean ground turkey, and it's getting pretty plain, pretty boring. What do you feel like when you eat that meal? You eat that chicken and you have that rice or that potato, and it just kind of sits in your stomach. And it doesn't matter how hard you chewed it, or if you spend a lot of time trying to enjoy that meal, it just sits there. But now after 8 weeks of dieting, if I put a cheeseburger in front of you, your mouth just starts watering. And then all of a sudden you take that first bite, and then the next thing you know, that burger is gone. And it doesn't sit in your stomach like that chicken did, because your body is like welcoming that. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so good. The enjoyment that you get from that burger is unlike anything. Like I always tell people, nobody enjoys food like bodybuilders enjoy food. Because when you can't have something and you get to go back to it, you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot how amazing this was. And then what your body does is it changes how it utilizes that food. Like it just doesn't sit in your stomach like a brick. You feel good. You feel like you've digested. Now, like, you haven't had food like that in a while, so if it's a little bit greasy, like maybe you're going to get a little gas, but like that's okay.
True
Uh,
story.
right. But it's that mental game that you were talking about. Like you and I are similar in that regard, because like, oh, I don't need a cheat meal. I can do a whole prep without a cheat meal. I don't even let my clients call them cheat meals. We call them free meals, because I don't like the connotation that you have that you're cheating on your diet.
Exactly.
This is a meal that you get to have off the plan. I almost always tell people, like, have it with your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, your best friend. Go be social and have that meal, because it hits different when you do. Sometimes when I'm bulking, I'll have 2 free meals a week, and I might just go to Chipotle midday while I'm working, and then I'll go out to dinner with my wife or my son. And the difference between those two meals is like not even comparable,
Okay, I
because
want to ask this, that you touched on something that I've kind of wondered and semi experimented with without any hard data. But I had this thought, and I understand that this doesn't apply to everybody because everyone's relationship with food is different. And I know that there are some people that are going to be listening to this that struggle with food addiction or struggled with anorexia, all of these things. Everyone's relationship with food is different. So, with that asterisk, I want to ask you this. I, as I was, there's a backstory to this. When I was in third grade when I lost one of my best friends. Now, it's when you're 8 years old and your best friend dies at the bus stop, like that's traumatic, right? That's very uncommon. And I coped with it partially through food. I remember seeing, I must have been watching Friends or something, that you're supposed to cope with sadness with ice cream. So I went to my house and I grabbed the Dryer's can of ice cream and I polished off half of it. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do when I'm sad. This is supposed to make people feel better. And so after I kind of healed my relationship with food and decided I didn't have to eat my emotions, ice cream kind of held this culprit space in my brain, like it was the bad guy.
hmm
And then while I was on prep, I thought to myself, ugh, because I gained a lot of weight. I ended up, going I really wide and being really unhealthy as a kid. But as an adult, I had this thought about ice cream, and it was the bad guy, and it had took me some work to realize that it wasn't the ice cream that was the bad guy, but I'm was hypothesizing with this relationship with food because there, like you said, there were meals that I ate that on the macro level, they were really healthy. The portion size was under control. I know that they were, as far as I could tell, very sustainably sourced, free from as much chemicals as I possibly could find it. And it felt terrible in my body. My friend even got to the point where he was throwing up his egg whites
hmm
because it was just so much of them.
right.
And I one night decided, okay, I got some ice cream. I'm not depressed. I just want some ice cream. And I went out and I got some. And there was these two wolves in my brain. One was saying, you're gonna go back to what happened when you were a kid. It's gonna make you bloat. It's gonna make you gain weight. You're gonna hold water, all these things. And then there was this other half of my brain that said, you had some ice cream the other night and you actually were healthier the next day. You felt better. You didn't shit bricks. The scale reflected that as well. You felt good. Your clothes fit great. I'm wondering all of that to ask this question. Is there evidence to suggest that the energy with which we eat our food determines how we carry it and how it's metabolized?
That's a really interesting question. And I don't know the answer scientifically about the different types of food and the energy that it might produce or allow you to produce. But I think that goes back to the social and emotional side of things, where you could be having a meal by yourself on prep. You got your tilapia and your broccoli, right? And
Yep.
then all of a sudden, if you can share that misery with your friend who's also on prep, that meal sucks a little bit less, right? And so and I think that's why a lot of people are such emotional eaters, is because we can have those emotional connections, not with the people, but with the food as well. And so when you have this, positive connotation, like that good home meal, like my mom makes a lasagna every Christmas. And so to me, lasagna is like, it's the best. And granted, it's like full of carbs and full of fat, and there's like the minimal amount of protein in there. But man, do I love lasagna. And there's something to be said about, like, I could put down an entire pan of lasagna and be totally okay with it. But if I ate an entire pint of ice cream, I'd hate myself for it. And so knowing where those two different things come from and like how that's tied together, tied and we're wired into our brain, I think that plays a really big role with food too. So it's like, what is the relationship behind that and why is it there?
I think that's an important question to ask. And then are we using food in and of itself to cope or reward instead of, as a tangent to cope? I used to use it as a coping and a reward system. And I even still do. I give my son an M&M every time he pees in the potty. Like
It's good
it's
motivators.
just
When I
there.
was teaching special ed, we did it too. It works.
And I don't use it
I
all the time, but
My computer is about
say
to
that
die,
again.
so my computer is about to die, so I want to plug it in really fast because I didn't get there before.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Yeah. And while he's doing that, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much. And if for some reason he drops, I just want to redirect everyone to Dustin's Instagram. We're going to put it in the show notes. Dustin's taken some amazing time to be with us today. I hope we get to do more. We'll cross our fingers that the computer gets plugged in. But I want you to go to Dustin's Instagram. It's DP_fit. Go see what he's doing. If you have liked this episode so far, go ahead and check out his Instagram, connect with him there. I know he's got some super cool resources that he's going to give away later on in the episode, and those will also be in the show notes here. When we were texting before the show, Dustin was talking about a couple of things. There was one that was a stress management ebook that we're going to get to later, and I want to ask you about that. And I also want to make sure that everyone gets the complete guide to caffeine. That's a new one.
Right.
What's that?
So caffeine is something that almost everybody uses regularly or religiously, even. Like, how many people start their day with a cup of coffee or two? How many people hit that Starbucks on the way to work? How many people are using it in their pre-workouts? Like, I don't have caffeine ever unless it's to drive performance, because that's what I do. I don't like coffee. I didn't grow up drinking coffee. My mom would make it and I thought it smelled awful, so I just never drank it. But I will destroy some pre-workout. So you start,
Over here,
and
dry
everybody's
scooping it.
experienced this. Yeah. Not since I was in my 20s, probably. Um, but everybody who drinks caffeine has experienced that there is some kind of tolerance that we build up, right? So
Mhm.
knowing how to assess that tolerance, or where to start, or how to best use caffeine to fuel performance versus like wake up in the morning. And then even more importantly is, so I've been on caffeine for a month straight every day. What now? How do I come off of caffeine? How do I avoid those headaches? And then, shoot, I've been off caffeine for a week and a half now, and I still need to train hard. I'm doing my last push before my prep starts. So I have to be able to go no caffeine and still train as hard as I can. So what are some supplements that we can use that will help fuel our brain, give us that cognitive focus, make us feel clear, but also give us a little bit of that energy? And then maybe even on top of that, because caffeine has a effect on your metabolism, what can we take that's also going to help us burn a little bit extra calories, increase our metabolism, improve our training performance. So all of that stuff is included in the caffeine guide.
I need to read that because
Yeah, it's been
I love my morning coffee. I don't use that to wake up necessarily though. I just enjoy it. It for me it's a symbol of the quiet time that I get to myself
Mhm.
before I start my day.
Right. And that even goes back to what we were just talking about like the relationship that you have with coffee is not for the caffeine, it's for what that represents.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that's why coffee especially has that thing like it doesn't necessarily, you maybe don't need that caffeine first thing in the morning, maybe you do. But like if I just said you can have caffeine but you can't have coffee, what would that do to your morning? Yeah, right there.
I worked hard for that.
Yeah, you don't want to take that away. It's the little
I
things
need
in
my little moment, and I don't wanna do it with hot chocolate. I'd probably go to, like a French brew cocoa bean or something. I don't know. It's not the caffeine, it's my moment.
Yeah, and there's plenty of evidence that says, you know, when you get tired, it's from adenosine. Adenosine builds up in your system from the moment we wake up. We go through, we build up these activities, we do our workouts, we do work, we get stressed out. Adenosine is building up, and that's what makes us tired.
Mm.
Caffeine works on those same receptors as adenosine does. So caffeine blocks the receptor so you can't feel that tiredness. When you wake up, typically we're still groggy. Most people are waking up to an alarm. So the adenosine is still in the system. And when you take caffeine first thing in the morning, the caffeine's not, you can drink as much coffee as you'd like, but the caffeine is not getting into that receptor because it's still full. So most of the time when people are having their caffeine or having their coffee, it's less to do with getting that wake up and more to do with like the routine of it, the structure of their morning, how they feel when they get that nice warm thing on that cold morning.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, that's fascinating, and then your other is it a book or resource guide you've written about reduction of stress?
Yeah, so it's just a stress management ebook because the thing that spurred me to work on that was most of the people that I work with are men. Most of them are business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, people who are just on the go and who are working constantly. And so the conversation I had with one of my guys recently was he doesn't realize how stressed he is because the baseline stress is just here. So
Oh,
like
I
this is
totally agree with you on this. Entrepreneurs, our baseline is so high.
because there's so many things that you have to do every day that it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's, I got to put on my marketing hat and I got to put on my advertising hat and then I got to put on my podcaster hat, and you have all of these things and it feels normal. It doesn't feel stressful because that's what you do every day. But that doesn't change how your body interprets that. It's like people say they work out to relieve their stress. Well, yes, and that's a good thing. However, your body can't differentiate between the stress of that workout and the stress of a deadline. And
Are you
so
talking about eustress and distress? I've heard these terms before.
kind of
Yeah.
uh, not quite, but when we're under that distress, it's that feeling that we don't like. It's that like that looming like, oh crap, something's coming. Um, but in actuality, what's happening in the body is it's just the release of cortisol. And when you are chronically stressed out, you have chronically elevated cortisol, and that's going to do things like make it harder to lose weight. It's going to make it harder to diet because you're going to have a lot more cravings. You're going to store additional belly fat. And then the worst culprit is what it does to your sleep. So
Mm.
people who are chronically stressed out are not sleeping well. And then because you're not sleeping well, you're going to be more stressed out. And that's the vicious cycle there. And so what we need to do first for a lot of my guys is assess the stress level. Like, okay, so during the day, how do you feel? Like on a scale from 1 to 10, you wake up and you're already like, okay, I have this meeting, I have to talk to Joe, I have to send out this email, and I have to fire Steve. And
Ugh.
all of a sudden, it's like you woke up and you're instantly through the roof. Now, does your body have the opportunity to come down? Because cortisol is a cool thing because we absolutely need it. In the morning, that's what gets released to help wake us up. The sunshine comes in, hits our eyes, hits our skin, cortisol elevates, we wake up, we feel really good. However, we don't feel so good when that doesn't have a chance to come down. So we want that natural spike in the morning, and then we want it to be able to taper off throughout the day. So what are some things that we can do to help our body do that more naturally? And maybe we need to use some supplementation. But that's kind of what that stress management ebook was all about, was how can the clients that I work with help bring down the stress level that they experience so that they can start to sleep better, so that they can have less stress, so that they can, X, Y, and Z.
I like the way
Because,
you put that because none, I don't think any of us want to admit that we're stressed,
mhm,
especially entrepreneurs, because the doing what we do keeps the lights on.
right.
And if we stop doing what we do, that's more stressful because then the lights are on and the power's off and the water stops and everything else stops, right? I
Oh,
would
yeah.
rather have this stress than that stress. So sometimes
Exactly.
we're, harmosing it and choosing these hards, right? But you bring up a really good point on the scientific level of there is a place for cortisol. I think it's in a lot of ways it's become the bad guy,
Yeah.
and it's not. It just needs to be put in the right place.
Hmm.
It's meant to keep us alert. It's meant for us to wake up when you're driving on the freeway and you catch something out of the corner of your eye and you're able to react because your cortisol level and your adrenaline spiked. There's a place for that. But you're
Hmm.
also saying and what you said, in the white space of what you said, I heard this, and I wonder if you agree with it, that when we wake up and there's the appropriate surge of cortisol, giving it the chance to go down means that we're living a life that we enjoy.
Yeah, I think so. I do, because when you have the opportunity to connect with your kids, like you could have had the most stressful day at the office and you open the door and one of them just attacks your leg and you get this big hug. All of a sudden it's just like, you have this release. And it's moments like those that some people just don't get. Whether it's their stress is just too high or they don't have the kids to do that. Maybe it's your dog that comes home and you're like, oh yes, I know when I get home my dog is going to absolutely plow through me at the door. It's those little things that really do make a difference. And when you don't have the opportunity to get those things, I think it just is one more notch in that cortisol belt where you just keep it piling up. It's
Yeah.
trying so hard to go down throughout the day, but maybe instead of taking a deep breath, you're sending that angry email. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have sent that email. And now your cortisol's higher because you're like, well, what's the backfire going to be there?
Yeah.
Um, so just taking a second. Viktor Frankl wrote a really amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. And
Amen.
it's
Love that book.
it's the most famous quote in that book, but he talks about um, between every stimulus and response, there's that moment. And like what you do with that moment is so important. And it determines like you had a hard day and your kids are screaming. Like, do you take that moment and think about how you want to react, or do you just yell, quiet down, I'm trying to work. I had a stressful day. Or do you take that moment and be like, they're kids and they're excited to see me and they're having a lot of fun. My son loves to play wall ball in the kitchen and he just like bounces this basketball off the wall incessantly and it could go all day. And sometimes I just have to say, he's 10. He doesn't have a brother. He's just playing. It's okay. You don't need to freak out. You can take a walk with the dog. He can play. It's going to be all right.
I had that moment this morning when the chaos of the house was going on, and the fingerprints on the counter and the dishes that got left over from the night before and all the sounds and stimulus. And I was walking from the pantry to the kitchen and I had that exact moment of stimulus and response that you're referring to. And I thought about it because my oldest is 18. She's moved out. They're going to be bringing grandkids into my life. Like, that blows my mind. That
Yeah.
absolutely blows my mind. I hope they wait a little bit, but that's okay. But at any point, it was this little prompting that said, "These moments are gonna be gone all too soon.
Mhm.
I'm gonna miss this." In fact, my daughter's coming through right here just to say goodbye. I love you. Love you too. Mwah. I'll see you Monday? Okay. Love you so much. Have a good weekend. That was like the perfect thing.
Yeah, that could not have been a better segue. He was just waiting there for that.
I love you too, baby girl. Okay, tell the other kids to come say hello or goodbye as well. Yeah, yeah. They go to their dads every other weekend, and that's a perfect example because I'll be in silence all weekend, and
Yeah.
I will admit that some of that is welcome.
Right. I'm there with you too. My son he's been at his dad's all weekend too. So it's peaceful. But at the same time, like if it was any more than a week, I'd be like,
Yeah,
where's my child? I need
as
my
long as
other.
it's not permanent.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great week. It's welcome sometimes. You got a lot of work to do. And sometimes you feel bad about that. You're like, I don't think that I should feel good that my kid isn't here this week.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of guilt to that.
A little bit there is. Yeah, yeah, and then I try to balance like, "Oh, I'm not only a mom, I'm also Marianne, and I get to do things that I enjoy too, and I'm just gonna bloom where I'm planted. I'm gonna enjoy it when they're here, and I'm gonna enjoy being myself when I don't get to have them."
Yeah. And I think
Oh,
one of my favorite things is like technology gets a bad rap in a lot of ways because we are so wrapped up in it. But I absolutely love when I get a memory from my Google Photos or whatever my Apple. I just switched to Apple everything now, so I don't even know what it
welcome to
is.
the orchard.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but when I get that little pop up that says, "Hey, this is a little memory collage from 3 years ago," and I get to see my son when he was 7, or when he was 5, or when he was 4, or a video pops up, and I'm like, "Oh my god!"
It hits you.
Oh, it like in the best way, but you
Yeah,
really have that moment. You're like, these are such fleeting moments, and they're not forever.
yeah.
Somebody once told me that they have a calendar marked up on their board for when their kid turns 18, and like every day, like you X off the days before they're 18, and then that's effectively when that is done. Like
Yep, my heart just cinched up on that.
yeah,
Ugh.
you only have so many days, and the days go so slow, but the years go so fast, and those cliches are, I guess they're cliches for a reason.
True that.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful place to put a period on why we do what we do. We be healthy so that we can enjoy our lives, we can enjoy the times with our kids. We put ourselves through these hard workouts at the gym, these meal preps, all of these things in order to enjoy the life that we're living, in order to enjoy the day that we wake up to every single day. I don't know if we can say it better than what we've been able to learn from you for the past hour.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your
absolutely.
expertise with us. I would love to do a part 2, and man, I hope we get to do some events together. That would be pretty damn awesome.
Yes, please. I love doing anything where I can connect with more humans. Put me in. I'm such an introvert at heart that I love a good chance to get out.
Oh, good. Me too. Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you're in Utah next time, let me know. What's your neck of the woods? I don't know if I remember.
I live right outside Portland, Oregon, so I'm just up a little bit
Cool.
north and a little bit west.
There you go. Oh, I haven't been up there. So,
It's beautiful. I grew up in Minnesota, so this has been the last 10 years of my life up here.
oh, nice. No more -4 freezing cold
Yeah,
there, ultimately, anyway. Well, I am so grateful to have you on the show, and I'm just going to send everyone to the show notes. And you said you had some giveaways on your Instagram. How do people get those?
yeah. So anytime you guys want to connect with me, always hit my Instagram. That's the number one spot for it. But if you want either the caffeine ebook or the stress management ebook, just give me a follow and then send me a DM, Marianne, and that way I'll know they're coming from the show, and we'll get you hooked up with anything that you need, whether it's one-on-one coaching, whether it's just some ebooks, whether it's just you got some more questions that didn't get answered on the podcast. I'm happy to do that.
I love that. I'm gonna say goodbye to my son. He's taken off too. Love you. Love you. And with that, we will say goodbye to you on this episode, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending time on yourself. And I gotta say, I always like to wrap up with this. If you had someone's name come to mind while you were listening to this episode, that means they were praying for what you now have. That means that you're supposed to get them this episode. That means maybe you're supposed to send them a text. They were on their knees somehow at some point for something, and their messengers are letting you know. So get this to them. And if someone sent this to you, just remember that that's a symbol of love from them because you were in their mind, and maybe they're answering a prayer for you. So thank you for being here, Dustin. Thank you so much again. And friends, we will see you next time on the Marianne Hickman Show.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Marianne.
You bet. Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We have some pretty amazing speakers on my podcast, and of course, more to come. If this is something that you enjoyed, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I love your comments, and I respond to every single one of them personally, not a bot or an agency. So if this is something you're enjoying, tell me about it. Tell me your gold nuggets. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important thing I want you to laser in on. I told you about the podcast database. You've probably seen me post about it all over social media. I want to make sure that you get it. So here's what I want you to do. Go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put all of your information in there, I'm going to send you the document. You request access to it. Boom, it's unlocked. Once you're in there, my rule of thumb is to apply to 10 podcasts a month. It's very digestible. It's very easy to do. And the database gets updated twice a week. So I want you constantly checking back in there for the next podcast that fits your audience. Thank you for being here. Much love to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.